DDR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Porto Novo. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world. We are live on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. French parliamentarians, including a Senegalese, present a motion to investigate the Chiari massacre. Mali Supreme Court had indefinitely postpones trial of former Minister of Economy prosecuted for illegal corruption or alleged corruption, and Ghana's Electoral Commission to conduct special voting on December 2 across all 276 polling stations.
The Commission has recruited close to 210,000 temporary officials across various categories, from returning officers to deputy returning officers, presiding officers, polling assistants in all the 40,900 plus polling stations across the country.
And Gambia's National Human Rights Commission holds a dialogue on mental health rights.
Mental health is not only a public health issue, but it is also a critical human rights concern. Stigma, discrimination, and neglect surrounding mental health often results in other violations of fundamental human rights.
Please stay tuned for details of these and more stories coming up.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for joining us and welcome to our listeners in West Africa and beyond. This edition of Newslink begins in Senegal as attention has turned to a cross-party motion tabled by 5 French parliamentarians, including Naba Diop, a Socialist Party member of Senegalese origin. The motion seeks to investigate the Chiari massacre, a tragic and mysterious event that occurred 80 years ago. The motion, introduced in French on Tuesday, underscores the growing calls to uncover the truth about the massacre as Senegal prepares to mark 80 years or 80th anniversary of this historic atrocity. Ogie Obiarika tells us more.
On Tuesday, the parliamentarians presented to the press a motion for a resolution that they intend to submit to the French National Assembly. Naba Diop stresses that this proposal is an essential initiative to restore the honor and dignity of the Senegalese riflemen murdered by the French army. What is at stake in this motion for a resolution is that if the work is conclusive, the resulting report could prompt the French government to officially recognize the Chiari massacre. This event is an indelible stain on relations between France and its African colonies. At the end of the Second World War, thousands of African soldiers known as Senegalese riflemen fought for France. After their demobilization, some were regrouped at the Chiari military camp, awaiting payment of their indemnities. On December 1, 1944, the riflemen of the Chiari camp were exterminated and the others of French officers because they were demanding their dues. The exact number of victims remains uncertain to this day. Estimates range from 35 to over 300. Symbolically, the motion for a resolution bears the name of Ousmane Sembene, former rifleman, Senegalese filmmaker, and writer and director of the 1988 film Camp de Chiari.
Ogie Obiarika with that report. In Guinea, the Court of Repression of Economic and Financial Offences on Tuesday ordered a review of the state of health of the former Prime Minister under Alpha Conde's regime. The decision followed his inability to show up at the court as earlier scheduled. Dr. Ibrahima Kassori Fofana has been detained for 2 years for alleged misappropriation of public funds, illicit enrichment, and money laundering. His lawyers continue to demand that he be transferred to a hospital abroad for appropriate treatment. Abdullah Hassan has more in this report by WADL's Chiano Alpha Ibrahima Baude in Conakry.
Scheduled to appear before the Create on Tuesday, the former Guinean Prime Minister currently admitted at a hospital did not make it to the court as expected. Ibrahim Kassori Fofana is charged with embezzlement of public funds, illicit enrichment and money laundering. At the start of the hearing, the judge reminded the parties that on November 19, one of the judges, assisted by a court clerk, went to the hospital for questioning and to ascertain the defendant's physical condition. After this reminder, the court reacted, to which Dina Sample was the first to speak. This defense lawyer pointed out that the content of the magistrate's report on Fofana's health status was consistent with the medical report of October 15, 2024 in the case file. He asserted that it was necessary to transfer his client to a better-equipped health facility for adequate care before being tried. While the public prosecutor's office opposed the request, the court, after a short recess, ordered the Director General of the Clinic Pasteur to appoint a doctor to examine Dr. Ibrahim Kasori Fofana to drop a report on his state of health. The report would recommend whether or not the former Prime Minister needs to be transferred from the clinic and indicate the appropriate hospital for his treatment. The judge set a deadline of 5 days for this task, and the hearing was adjourned to December 4, 2024 for further debates.
Abdullah Hassan with the report by WAD House Channel Alpha Ibrahim Abaude in Conakry. Still on judicial matters, the Criminal Division of the Supreme Court in Mali has denied Wadr Fili Sissoko's request for provisional release. Detained for over 3 years, the former Minister of Economy and Finance was refused a new request for provisional release on November 13. She is being prosecuted for corruption and damage to public property in connection with the purchase of presidential aircraft and military equipment estimated at 130 billion CFA francs. Details in this report voiced by Eche Atiso and filed by our correspondent in Bamako, Ali Ochiam.
Wadr Fili Sissoko's trial in Mali's biggest corruption scandal has been postponed indefinitely, but she remains in detention. The postponement, according to state representatives, will allow for further inquiry as the former Minister of Economy and Finance under the regime of the late Ibrahim Boubacar Keita maintains her innocence. Detained for more than 3 years, Wadr Fili Sissoko is being prosecuted for corruption and damage to public property in connection with the purchase of presidential aircraft and military equipment. Dianguina Tunkara, one of the lawyers, criticized the Malian judicial system for a continuous detention, citing Article 135 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, which stipulates that no one may be held in pre-trial detention for more than 3 years. Tunkara has therefore appealed to the Criminal Division of the Supreme Court to obtain Sissoko's release. It is worth noting that 10 personalities, including former ministers, businessmen, and military personnel, have been named in this vast embezzlement estimated at 130 billion CFA francs. The trial into the purchase of the presidential plane and military equipment that dates back to 2014 opened last September at the Financial and Economic Crimes Court.
And that's Eche Atiso voicing Ali Ochiam's report in Bamako.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Ghana's Electoral Commission (EC) says it is ready for special voting exercise for the 2024 election happening on Monday, December 2, 2024. The exercise allows groups like journalists and security officers who will be busy on December 7 to vote early, and it will take place across all 276 polling stations in the country. During a meeting with the National Election Security Task Force, the EC chairperson Jane Mensah said everything is in place for a smooth voting process. The EC boss further disclosed on Tuesday, November 26, that ballot papers were sent to Northern, Bono and Bono East regions, whereas the remaining regions are scheduled for delivery soon. For the main election on December 7, Jane Mensah told the media conference in Accra that 95% of the ballot papers and biometric machines are being distributed for use on the election day.
President Boubacar has been very slow to act or has turned a blind eye, fueling allegations of relative partiality in his accountability efforts. Senta has observed a tacit attempt by the government to turn a blind eye on critical decisions against some officials alleged to have violated key anti-corruption laws or indulged in corruption and other misdeeds. As of August 2024, the Liberal Anti-Corruption Commission reported that over 70% of officials appointed by President Boubacar have refused to declare their assets, incomes, and liabilities.
So what you heard is rather a story from Liberia, where the Center for Transparency and Accountability in the country has expressed deep disappointment over the country's failure to adequately address corruption. This failure is despite the existence of laws and institutions such as Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and the General Auditing Commission designed to combat corrupt practices in the country. Addison Miami, the voice you just heard, who is the executive director of the anti-corruption entity, speaking in a press conference in Monrovia, criticized the government for, among other things, failing to enforce asset declaration law. According to him, over 70% of the political appointees are yet to declare their assets as required by law. Meanwhile, nearly 10 months into President Joseph Boakai's administration, concerned citizens are already calling for accountability and transparency over alleged corrupt practices in ministries, departments, and agencies. Let's go back to our earlier story in Ghana, where the Electoral Commission EC says it is ready for the Monday, December 2 special voting 2024.
Officials are in readiness. We have an adequate supply of the ballot papers, the indelible ink, the various forms that may be necessary. And of course, the biometric verification devices are also in place to ensure a smooth and seamless special voting exercise. The Commission has recruited close to 210,000 temporary officials across various categories, from returning officers to deputy returning officers, presiding officers, polling assistants in all the 40,900 plus polling stations across the country. And as we speak, they are undergoing extensive training in all the constituencies. We have training undergoing for all the categories of staff. And as a top-up, we have also developed some videos so that once the physical training is done, we will disseminate the videos so that our staff would be able to refresh their memories and go through the various training programs that they have been provided.
So that's Ghana's Electoral Commission, Jane Mensah, assuring the media of their readiness for the special voting on December 2. Let's turn attention to Gambia, where on issues of health issues, the National Human Rights Commission in Gambia on Tuesday held its first national stakeholders dialogue on mental health rights in the country. The event was aimed at highlighting the consequences of mental health related disorders and challenges these individuals face, including the rights violation. As WAD Alsan Kulijanko in Bantu reports, the dialogue was supported by Gambian Ministry of Health, Action Aid International, World Health Organization, and UNICEF.
According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 4 people globally will experience a mental health or neurological disorder at some point in their lives. Here in the Gambia, it is estimated that 27,000 people suffer from severe mental health or substance abuse disorders, and an additional 91,000 individuals living with mild mental health challenges that still require treatment. These figures, according to the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Emmanuel Diouf, are alarming.
Mental health is not only a public health issue, but it is also a critical human rights concern. Stigma, discrimination, and neglect surrounding mental health often results in other violations of fundamental human rights.
There are limited support services, fewer trained professionals, and service providers, and a weak institutional setup for handling mental health-related issues in the Gambia. These challenges and the rise in induced mental illnesses are placing additional strain on families, communities, and already limited mental health infrastructure. Speaking at the event, the Gambia's Vice President Mohamed B. Jallow reiterated the government's efforts to address mental health issues in the country.
Ongoing reforms such as the constitution-making process and the drafting of the mental health bill provide opportunities to strengthen domestic legislation, protect the rights of people living with mental health conditions, and enable equitable access to services. The government of the Gambia remains fully committed to advancing mental health in partnership with development partners to achieve the goals of the Recovery-Focused National Development Plan at Agenda 2063 while upholding our national obligations.
The overall objective of the National Human Rights Commission is to raise awareness of the need to protect the rights of people with mental health in the Gambia. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Sankula Janko reporting from Banjul.
You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and live on wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. French parliamentarians, including a Senegalese, present a motion to investigate the Achari massacre and Ghana's Electoral Commission to conduct special voting on December 2 across 276 polling stations. The Gambia National Human Rights Commission hosts a dialogue on mental health rights. And still ahead in this news, Interpol arrests over 1,000 criminals in 19 countries, including West Africa. We also have press review, the guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol, has announced the result of a major operation against cybercrime. The operation is being carried out in conjunction with the AFRIPOL, a technical institution of the African Union. It has resulted in a major crackdown in several countries across the continent. This coordinated campaign mobilized police forces from 19 countries between September 2 and October 31. Augustine Coley has the rest of the details from the November 26 statement.
1,000 people have been arrested in 19 African countries by the International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol. The operation also led to the dismantling of a large number of malicious networks, with 134,000 infrastructures discovered, according to Interpol. In details, 8 people were arrested in Senegal for setting up an online Ponzi scheme, a fraudulent financial scheme worth $6 million, which affected more than 1,800 victims. In Cameroon, a group running a multi-level marketing scam was dismantled. The group offered to pay contributions in exchange for promises of jobs or training. But once in Cameroon, those who had contributed were held captive and forced to lure others into the scheme. Elsewhere in Luanda, Angola, a criminal group that operated a virtual casino mainly targeting Nigerian and Brazilian players was also dismantled. In Kenya, Operation Serengeti helped solve a case of online credit card fraud. In all, over 35,000 victims were identified, mainly in Africa and Europe. This large-scale operation is being carried out with the help of internet service providers, thanks to information sharing. These are the networks and criminals behind ransomware, email compromise, digital extortion, and phishing.
Augustine Coley reporting there.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, for today's press review, Sankole Janko is standing by with highlights of top trending stories on the pages of newspapers in Gambia.
Welcome to this edition of the Press Review. Let's begin with the Standard newspaper today. Gambia takes first in Africa Visa Openness Index report. The photo of President Adama Barrow, a huge photo of President Barrow on the front page of the Standard newspaper. This other one reads, fishermen alarmed over trawler disruption at sea. Economic growth outlook favorable, that is according to Central Bank of the Gambia. NHRC to hold national convergence on controversial draft constitution. NSHR is National Human Rights Commission. Gajsi 58 million civil suit against ex-petroleum MD boss continues. Witness request order from commission before submitting account documents. Let's move on to the Point newspaper today. Magistrate urges protection of tourists. Of course, it's tourist season here in the Gambia. Central Bank intensify efforts to curb inflation. Police to investigate alleged destruction of seized drugs. It is alleged that the drug law enforcement agents who recently claimed to have seized drugs, including cocaine. However, it is alleged that they swapped the original cocaine for fake cocaine to make a show. And according to this report, the police began investigation into this allegation. Government ministers talk tough on bushfire orders. Senegal sees drug worth over 18 billion CFA. Let's move on to the final newspaper for today, and that is the Fourier newspaper. And the lead story on the Fourier reads, domestic debt at $43.8 billion, with the photo of the central bank governor, that is Bois Saidy. FPAC to lay consolidated report on 2025 estimates today. That is another story on the Fourier newspaper. Residents of Sierra South urge President Barrow to construct roads, hospitals. How KMC handled allegations of bribery involving former deputy. And COP29 and the G20, Africa's call for climate finance action. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you in the studio.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon is Dr. Ibrahim Assane, a former Senegalese parliamentarian who shares his thoughts on the significant motion tabled by 5 French MPs on Tuesday. The motion seeks to unravel the mystery behind the Chiari massacre perpetrated by French soldiers some 8 decades ago. Dr. Sani first speaks of his reaction to the development.
I feel some satisfaction actually because of accountancy. People, the Western world are always bothering us about this speech of accountancy, transparency, good governance, and of course, not only on governance, but it should also be on history. So we want to know what happened, and we want to know who is responsible, and we want to know why it happened. And so really it would be good. Don't forget, I had the lead role in the film Count de Charoy of Saint-Ben Ousmane. So in a way, I lived those events by proxy. So, and I felt for those soldiers who were being killed in front of me in the film, of course. And so it's a reaction of satisfaction.
It's been 80 years. The ex-president of France admitted the guilt, but the current president has not. What do you make of his posture?
It's their own internal politics, really. I'm not, but eventually he will have to admit that there was a massacre. I don't know if he'll go to the point of giving apologies, but I think he will eventually admit there was a massacre. There's no way you can obliterate that. It did happen. I'm not a historian. I can't tell you exactly what happened. I can tell you what happened in the film where I play. But I think he will admit that there was a massacre.
So admitting this, going forward, what would it be to the narrative of Senegal's history, and will there be some compensations that Senegal would have to demand from France?
It's just not Senegal. There were soldiers from all over Africa. So they used to be called tirailleurs sénégalais. So compensation is just not to Senegal. I think it would be unfair to the other countries in Africa. So it should be compensation to all of those African countries, and all of Africa indeed, really. Apart from North Africa, there were soldiers from all over the rest of Africa. And I don't know, so compensation for loss of life? I can't see, but why not? Yes.
How do we prevent this? Yes, of course, we do not know when Third World War is going to come, but in a globally integrated world now, how should cooperation and how should mutual respect and gains be among developed countries and then underdeveloped countries?
Well, I think people have been trying to get to the point where we are interchanging between equals. We are being included in the global play in the world. It's detestable that some people think they have an innate right to lead the world and that we have to follow. So obviously, we should work hard towards an integrated world where people have a say and where everyone else is aware of everyone else, not just some people saying, okay, those do not count.
So that's our guest, Dr. Ibrahima Sani, a former Senegalese parliamentarian, sharing with us his thoughts on the significant motion tabled by 5 French MPs on Tuesday concerning the Chari massacre. Time for sports, and Liverpool head coach Arne Slot believes the uncertainty surrounding Mo Salah's future is not proving a distraction for the Egyptian forward as they prepare to face Real Madrid in the Champions League on Wednesday, which is today. After Sunday's win at Southampton, the Egypt international made a rare stop for reporters and said, "We are almost in December and I haven't received any offer yet to stay in the club. I am probably more out than in." However, Slot insists that there has been no hint of distraction from either his leading scorer, who is out of contract in summer, or his teammates. Salah's performance this season do not give the impression of a man looking forward to exit door. He has also scored 12 goals and provided 10 assists already, and Slot knows he has a huge part to play in the remaining of the season. Still on matters of football, the Football Association says it is investigating an allegation that referee David Cote discussed giving a yellow card with a fan before a championship match. Cote, 42, says he denies the claims and calls them false and defamatory allegations. The referee is already under investigations by FA and has been suspended by refereeing body, the Professional Game Match Officials Limited, the European footballing governing body UEFA, following separate allegations made about his conduct. The new report on Tuesday claims Cote exchanged messages with a fan discussing giving a yellow card before and after a game between Leeds and West Brom in 2019. And we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting live from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Muhammad Diop for their technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms: X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship gender program 50-50 with Nadi Tete. I am Christopher Ticho. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you.